folks, this is Pastor Mike Hoggard coming to you from Studio 2012 with another Watchman video broadcast. Somebody sent me a video a while back. I featured it on the Pastor Mike Online live broadcast. And if you don't know what that is, every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. Central Time, I do a live broadcast. You can get that at practically any of our websites. But anyway, somebody sent me a video, and it was rather interesting. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to YouTube videos. This one caught my eye. Here's a screen capture of it. It featured what looks like a giant footprint somewhere in South Africa. There's actually, I kind of cropped the photo a little bit. There's someone standing next to this thing. This footprint itself, if it in fact is that, is somewhere around 3 to 4 feet long. I mean, it's actually bigger than my footprint. And it's embedded on a rock that is straight up and down. Now, you ask the question, okay, number one, how can a footprint be that big? Number two, how can it be up on a wall like that and so on? Didn't someone carve this out? I'll say maybe. And the reason why I say maybe is because I believe the Bible. Now, over the next couple Watchman video broadcasts, this is what's going to happen. If you believe the Bible, if you just believe this book right here, then you won't have a problem believing what I'm going to share with you. If you don't believe the Bible, exactly what it say, well, I'm a Christian, I just don't believe everything in the Bible. Well, then you're going to have, I can tell you right now, you're going to have a big problem with some things that I'm going to say in here, because I'm going to talk about what I think if this footprint is real. I'm going to talk about what I think this is all about and why I think it's possible that at one time giants roamed the earth. Now, if you were to just kind of think about stories in your mind about giants, I mean, we know about giants. They're in all of our myths, all of our legends, all of our stories. King Arthur fought a giant. There's this tale about King Arthur killing a giant. Now, some people say King Arthur never existed, hence, therefore, he never killed a giant. But we have stories like that from all over the world. Even in Hindu mythology, they have a story of giants, kind of like human beings, kind of like half-god things, and they're very, very, very tall people. They're called the Daityas. Then Greek mythology, you have the Gigantes, and they were, so according to Greek mythology now, the Gigantes, this big, tall, you have the Roman Titans, it's sort of the same thing. They are the offspring of a god called Tartarus. No, that's not where we get tartar sauce from. A god named Tartarus and a goddess named Gaia. Now, you might sort of recognize those two names. Tartarus just happens to be one of the Greek words used in the Bible that is translated as hell. And in fact, the word Tartarus gives this idea of the lowest part of hell, or like the bottomless pit. Gaia, you've probably heard this before. Gaia is the earth goddess. She's the goddess of fertility. We talked about her several times before. She has gone by different names like Ashtaroth, Ishtar, Isis, Venus, and so on. There's a goddess all around the earth. She's always worshipped the same way, through fertility. And so this idea that the Greeks had this idea that a god from like the lowest part of the earth mated with Gaia, some sort of goddess creature, and they created these very, very tall, gigantic creatures that they call, our word gigantic, and the word giant actually comes from this particular word. And who doesn't remember the story of Jack and the Beanstalk? I remember this story from, when I was young, I was always hoping to find these magic beans that I could throw out the window, and there's giant vine ascending all the way up into heaven. And you remember the story. Jack climbs up the beanstalk, and he's up in the cloud, and he finds out there's a great big giant up there. I forgot to mention, and I think this might end up in some of the stories of Jack and the Beanstalk, depending on what version you're looking at. The giants of Greek mythology. Here's something interesting. They had like one eye right here. I hope I'm not writing on my forehead. They had one eye right here. Okay? This part was blank. They were called the Cyclops. I think that's interesting, and that might fit into something that we look at here in a little bit. Even in British folklore, this is actually in their statues in the Guildhall, which is like the City Hall of London. The Lord Mayor of London. There's a procession every year that features what are supposedly the two giants that protect London. They're named Gog and Magog. Here's a picture of the Royal Arcade in Melbourne, Australia, that's modeled after the Guildhall in London, which was originally erected in 1708. And it features the two protectors of London, and they're named Gog and Magog. Now, this is interesting. I don't know if you know this. The words Gog and Magog actually come from this book here. This is Ezekiel 38, Son of man, set thy face against Gog. And when God says set your face against them, that means God's saying, I'm not for them. Okay? I'm not for them. Maybe London needs to pick out something better to protect London. Anyway, Gog and Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and prophesy against him. Now, Gog and Magog, if you know a little bit about Bible prophecy in Ezekiel 38, Gog and Magog are like the two nations. It calls them the chief prince. That term sort of indicates to me that it's spiritual in nature. A prince in the Bible generally is a spirit, like a principality that Paul mentioned in Ephesians chapter 6. And so we have Gog and Magog, the chief prince of Meshach. We have a spiritual connection here. And in somehow, some way, in fact, I'm going to read to you, this is from the Wikipedia article on Gog and Magog. It says, the Lord Mayor's account of Gog and Magog says that the Roman Emperor Diocletian had 33 wicked daughters. Stop right here. 33. We're going to see that number here in a little bit. I think it's interesting. He had 33 daughters. He found 33 husbands for them to curb their wicked ways. They chafed at this, and under the leadership of the eldest sister, Alba, they murdered their husbands. For this crime, they were set adrift at sea. Now, stop right here, because I want you to think of a story that relates to a boat on water. Okay? Remember when we were talking about the Easter egg and so on, when we're talking about Isis and how she is reassembling the broken body of Osiris. There was something about Osiris' body being placed in a casket and floating down water. So I think this is a connection here. Think about it. For this crime they were set adrift at sea. They washed ashore on a windswept island, which they named Albion, which now is the land of England, after Alba. Here they coupled with demons. Okay, stop right here. Here they coupled with demons. So we have these women, these 33 evil, wicked women, and they are mating with gods, with devils, and gave birth to a race of giants whose descendants included Gog and Magog. So, I mean, we're seeing sort of a connection here with the giants and spiritual entities. Now, I won't get that far into this study probably in this video. I am going to go deal with that in the conclusion of this. But we're going to deal primarily with this idea of giants. Where did they come from? Because we have noted this before. If you look in all of human history, practically every culture, every society in the world has like 3 stories that are common. They all have dragon stories, every one of them. Every culture in the world has a story about dragons roaming the earth. And the anthropologists and the scientists say that's just myth and legend. They saw something and they exploded it, made it real big, and turned it into this dragon creature. Well, could be, except that the Bible mentions dragons. It calls them by different names like Leviathan, fiery flying serpent. I want you to remember that. We're going to see that again today. And so on. And so the Bible mentions things called dragons. Incidentally, the devil is referred to over and over in the Scriptures as the dragon. Every culture in the world, along with having dragon stories, and dragons could be probably linked with dinosaurs. Every culture in the world has a flood story. The Sumerians have a flood story. Babylonians have a flood story. The Mayans had a flood story. The American Indians had a flood story. The Greeks had a flood story. The story of Atlantis is the story of the flood. The story of Atlantis is the story of an advanced civilization ruled over by 10 gods. Think about that. With one demigod as their leader. Think a demigod is, according to mythology, a half human and a half god. They're mated together somehow and produced this demigod. Now that's all myth and legend. But the whole story of Atlantis is about an advanced civilization that existed and was covered over by a flood. Well, that matches almost perfectly the story of the Scriptures, where God said that He was done. He was tired of what was going on in the earth, and He was going to destroy the earth by water, and He saved a remnant. That man was Noah and his generations. We are of, according to the Scriptures, we are all the descendants of Noah through his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So, all the cultures of the world, all the stories, they have a story of dragons. The Bible happens to mention that they're real. It has a story of the flood. Somehow, some way, and the Bible will give you the accurate account of them. And then, all of the myths, all the legends, all the stories, all the tall tales. I forgot Paul Bunyan. You see, even America has a myth or a legend of a giant. And those of you who live in different places in the world, you don't know about Paul Bunyan. We grew up in school reading stories about Paul Bunyan. He was this giant woodsman. He could take an axe and chop a tree down with one swing. He didn't ride a horse. He rode an animal that they called Babe the Blue Ox, and that's how he got around. That was the story of Paul Bunyan. See if an American has a giant. Now, that's myth. That's mythology. That is tales that were told from one generation to the other. And I wouldn't pay attention to that, and I normally don't, except for that little pesky thing in the Bible where it just constantly mentions the word giants. Now, when I say the Bible, I'm saying the King James. I'll give you a little piece of information here at the beginning. And we're just going to pocket that information for now. And we're going to probably bring it up, probably not in this teaching, but some others. I just happened to be looking, as I started studying this out. Of course, I went through, and what we're going to do in this is we're going to talk about every place in the King James Bible that I could find, and I might have missed some. Every place in the Bible that refers to giants or these people of abnormally tall stature, which is why the King James Bible translated, there's actually 3 Hebrew words, why the King James Bible translated all 3 of these words into one conglomerate word, which was the word giant, because that's what they were. That's exactly what they were, and you'll see that as we go along. Something that I found very, very interesting, if you remember the video that we did called The Modern Translations of the Bible in the Spirit of Antichrist, I showed you that the modern Bibles nowadays, they tend to, it looks like they're trying to cover something up. For instance, the 2 places in the King James Bible that says, "This kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting,"